You were born in a village where winters cut like knives and summers burned the skin off your back. Your hands knew the feel of soil before they knew the warmth of rice. You thought the worst pain was hunger. You were wrong. It started with footsteps. Dozens of them, armored and heavy. The tax collector's voice sliced the air. This village is behind on quota. Your father did not argue. Your mother did not weep. Their silence was the price of survival. You remember the rope tightening around your wrists. Your brother reached for you. A soldier's whip kissed his face. Inside, dried radish, 2 coins, a ragged scarf. She didn't meet your eyes. Don't fight, she whispered. You spat on the ground. The blood surprised you bright, fast, beautiful. Your brother collapsed. No one helped him. You passed the willow tree where you once kissed land under the rain. You passed the river where you first swam naked. You passed everything that had ever belonged to you. You screamed, cursed, kicked. The villagers turned away, cowards, all of them. But you would have done the same. Your mother handed you a satchel. They dragged you with 5 others. All boys, all healthy, all young. Then the cart came. It reeked of manure, old sweat, rusted chains. They shoved you in, locked the wooden slats. Your fingers gripped the bars until they bled. You saw the red metal plate hot, hissing, the imperial seal glowing like a demon's eye. You smelled the flesh singe before the screams came. Blood filled your mouth like thick soup. But they held you anyway, branded you like cattle. As the cart rattled forward, the village grew smaller, the sun dipped lower, and your real name began to fade like ink in the rain. You didn't know where they were taking you. The wound festered. No one treated it, only that you would never return. And that something inside you had just died. Coarse tunic, stiff pants, hemp sandals that tore your sawless. You looked like all the others now. No face, no name. If you fell, you were kicked. If you cried, you were starved. But something inside you watched as his body tore like parchment. Only the red scar seared into your shoulder marked you as real. A soldier laughed. Now you look like a proper ghost. You stared at your reflection in a metal dish. Hollow eyes, broken teeth, skin that didn't look like yours. Who was this thing staring back? The cart stopped after 4 days. Your throat was raw from thirst. Your lips bled from biting them. Your wrists were bruised black and blue. They marched you into a holding compound behind a garrison fortress, high walls, watchtowers. You touched the scar on your back. It was real. You were real. But everything else had become a nightmare. Dogs that didn't bark, only bared their teeth. The sun scorched your back as you stood in line with the others. Then the branding began. One by one, each prisoner was shoved forward, held down, and burned. When it was your turn, you fought. Of course, you fought. They beat you until your cheekbone cracked. You passed out. When you woke, you were in a stone chamber. Your shirt was gone. Your back felt like it had been flayed open. Then came the shaving. They scraped off your hair clumps falling like ash. Next came the uniform. They trained you with whips. You didn't learn by lessons. You learned by pain. They taught you how to carry stones twice your weight, lash logs into scaffolding, dig trenches with fingers raw and bleeding. One night, a boy from your village home refused to work. They tied his limbs to oxen. You couldn't look away. You wanted to. That night, you stopped being a boy. This wasn't exile. This wasn't punishment. This was slaughter disguised as labor. You lay awake, hearing the whimpering around you, the moans of fever, the rustle of rats, and the wall was still far away. The wall loomed before you like a monster with no eyes, endless, brutal, alive. You arrived at the northern site after 12 days of marching. 20 started the journey, 15 arrived. The rest collapsed along the road left to rot, bones picked by birds. The overseer, General Lu, had a voice like a hammer, and eyes like glass. "You are here to serve the emperor," he barked. "You are already dead. Every night, you fell into a pit with dozens of others, your bed a patch of dirt, your pillow a stranger's shoulder. They herded you into a trench camp. Mud walls, barbed fences, guards on every corner. One man slit another's throat with a sharpened spoon. No one stopped him. The guards didn't care. Blood soaked into the ground and dried like spilled ink. You learned fast. For 2 days, he twisted and groaned until he stopped moving. The wall was built from stone, sweat, and the corpses of men like you. Every morning, you carried boulders up steep inclines. You weren't alone, but you were never safe. If a man collapsed, they buried him inside the wall itself. Let the traitors become mortar, they joked. Fights broke out over scraps of rice. Punishments were worse. If a stone cracked during lifting, the lifter was flogged until he bled from his feet. One night, you woke to a scream high and sudden. A man had stolen water. The guards hung him upside down from the scaffolding. You stopped speaking. You learned to live with your eyes down, your hands steady, your heart numb. Words were dangerous. A wrong syllable could mean suspicion. A friendly nod could earn envy. Watched where the shade fell at noon. But you listened, your fingers cracked. You could sense the weak points in the stone, the rotting timber in the scaffolds, the sharp edge of wind before a storm. You became a ghost that moved before orders, obeyed before the whip cracked. Your spine screamed with each sunrise, but you endured. He studied the wall not with pity, but obsession. It must last 1,000 years. He whispered to no one, as if casting a curse. Not for rebellion, just to survive the next sunrise. You learned the rhythms, when the guards changed shifts, who pocketed rations, which men were broken, which ones still dreamed of escape. A man-min, a quiet boy who once gave you his bread, fell to his death. He didn't scream. He just vanished. You stood beside him, still a slave, but now with purpose. Others looked on with jealousy, but no one dared touch you. Wei was feared, his favor, poison and shield. You began to copy them. You paced your breath to preserve strength, tied cloth under your tunic to cushion your spine, saved your sweat to moisten your lips, and above all, you stayed silent. But Wei asked you to lift, point, hold, mark. No beatings came. They questioned workers at random. Beat answers out of the ones who cried first. Someone named you. Silence was your shield. Cleverness, your weapon. You owe me nothing, he said, not looking up. But remember, men die faster than bricks in this place. When a guard tried to frame a boy for theft, you planted false evidence in return. The only thing that survives is knowledge, entrance, your only prayer. You weren't living, you were waiting. Waiting for a chance that may never come. Your back bent. You learned to read the wall like others read scrolls. That's how Master Wei noticed you. He was no prisoner, an imperial architect, old, hunched, with fingers stained by ink and callus. One morning, he called you out. You thought it was a trick. The guards had pulled men before, only to beat them as an example. You have eyes, he said. That means you have worth. He began to teach you how to measure stone angles, how to test clay mixture with only scent, how to gauge wind by flame. Then the rains came. Monsoon tore through the trench camps. The wall shook like a wounded beast. One scaffold snapped. The overseer blamed sabotage. An investigation began. You were dragged into a tent, bloodied and bound. Admit it, the officer growled. You loosened the lashings. You said nothing, your mouth filled with the taste of iron. Then, a voice. He was with me. Way stood at the entrance, robes soaked, eyes hard. He's under my order. I sent him to the southern pit. It was a lie. A perfect one. They let you go. That night, you found Way cleaning his brushes by torchlight. After that, you stayed close to him, watched, listened, memorized. When another man tried to hide extra food and was caught, you were the one who whispered the warning. You were no longer drifting. You were choosing. Your hands still bled. But now, you made the bleeding count. You had begun as meat. You were becoming something sharper. The wall rose. So did your place among the nameless. You no longer lifted stones. You marked measurements, oversaw rows of laborers, directed the binding of scaffolds. The guards stopped pushing you. They asked questions instead. Quiet ones, respectful. Before leaving, he handed you a scroll sealed with wax. Show this only when your life depends on it. Way had gone south, summoned by the capital for another imperial project. So you rose alone. The man called Jin, a foreman with a serpent's grin, invited you to drink. You've done well, he said. Too well. With position came danger. Eyes followed you now, not with pity, but calculation. You crushed it with a stone. Then you left the stone beneath Jin's blanket. No words, only a message. The next day, your portion of rice reeked of bitter almonds. You stopped eating food you didn't prepare yourself. One night, someone slit your bedding open and slipped in a centipede as thick as a finger. The games escalated. Told him Jin planned a food revolt. You offered no proof, only panic, planted whispers, and the single forged message in Jin's handwriting. Your water jar cracked mysteriously. Your firewood vanished. Orders you never gave were passed down in your name, wrong orders, punishable by death. You tracked the boy who carried them, caught him in the act, held him by the neck. Who sent you? He sobbed. Jin said. If I didn't, he'd bury my brother in the wall. You knew him, Min's cousin. No one moved to help. You let him go. You stood alone, watching the moon hover above the wall like a silent judge. Instead, you approached the captain of the guards. They took Jin away in chains that night. He didn't return. But you didn't celebrate. You had won. But something inside you had shifted. Something soft, something human, had died again. He reminded me of someone. Later that winter, word spread. A boy collapsed from exhaustion and was left in the snow. The wall stretched like a scar across the bones of the north. You became part of it, nameless, necessary, eternal, strong, careful, grateful, called you teacher, though you never claimed the title. You taught him how to speak without speaking, how to bend without breaking, how to live among wolves without becoming one. A cot, a ledger, a title etched on bamboo slips. You no longer bled from your hands, but inside, something always ached. You wrapped him in your cloak, carried him to your tent, shared your food. When he asked why, you lied. He gave me his last piece of bread. That night, the stars were clear, the air was razor cold. You had learned to manipulate the system. One who promised fewer laborers would die. One who sent more supplies. But nothing changed. The wind still howled. The stones still claimed lives. His name was carved into a pillar in the capital, gilded with gold. You were no longer the bleeding hands at the bottom. You were the quiet voice in the shadows. You could destroy. You could protect. But you could not go back. Years passed. If your bones were lucky, They rest in the cold mortar of the wall you built. The boy you saved, he grew into a man. They called you overseer now. You had your own tent. One evening, they unearthed bones from the foundation, tangled ribs and shattered teeth, crushed beneath layers of mortar. The men recoiled. You only nodded. Their eyes are wide, like yours once were. Their footsteps uncertain. I knew him, you said softly. No one asked what his name was. Names disappeared here. Only the wall remembered. Snow falls gently, your bones creak, but your back stays straight. A new emperor had taken the throne in the capital, they said. Your student brought news one morning. Master Wei had died. You felt nothing. The boy, now a man, asked, "What will you do when they release us?" You didn't answer, because you knew there would be no release, no pardon, no return to the village that had sold you like grain. And yet, you left him the scroll, the one Wei had given you. You'll need this one day, you said. He cried when you said goodbye. You didn't. You had no tears left. Now, you sit at the top of the ridge, where the wall cuts the sky like a blade. You watch the men march below, new laborers, new prisoners, new ghosts in the making. The cycle begins again. And you are no longer a man. You are the silence between screams. The shadow beneath stone, the will that refused to die. The wind carries your breath into the distance. You built the wall, and it built you.